I need to know, I need to know, I need to know. You need to know, you need to know, you need to know. We all need to know. What do you need to know? What do I need to know? What do we need to know? As individual, as a group of people, as a family, as a group of people in terms of church, members, pastors, your companies, what are the mistakes that occurred last year? Have you learned from all the mistakes? Or you are still going to continue from all the mistakes that you have performed, that you have done last year? Go one after the other. Check it one after the other to see where you have made errors. What are the things that you have done and God is not happy with? Where God has given you instruction, instead of you to obey the instruction, you are doing sacrifice. God says you have to be holy just like my Father is holy. So Bible says, if I allow any sins in my heart, God will not answer my prayer. When you are doing sacrifice, instead of you to obey God, God will never answer you. For example, God told King Saul, go to Amalekites and destroy all the city, their animals, their human beings, and their houses. But when King Saul got there, he saw beautiful ladies and he separated them. He saw fat animals, he separated them. He saw cows, he saw money, he took it. And he says he's going to use it as a sacrifice for God. Don't forget, God knew that all those things are there. He did not told Saul to spare anything. Likewise, in this year 2025, God knows what you are going to pass through. God is not asking any sacrifice from you. Don't let any pastor deceive you. Don't let any prophet deceive you. Don't let any man of God deceive you. Don't let your parents deceive you. Don't let yourself deceive yourself. God is not asking any sacrifice from you. What God is asking from you this year is total obedience. Total obedience. There is no amount of tithe, there is no amount of offering, there is no amount of sowing a seed that can appease God when you don't obey God. Until you obey God, that's when God will accept your sacrifice. Just like Jesus said, if you have anybody in mind that you are fighting with, all you need to do when you bring your offering, when you bring your tithe, when you bring anything into the presence of God, leave it and first of all go and settle it. Many of us, we are doing sacrifice to appease God, to make God look unto our ways. God will never do that. No amount of fasting, no amount of prayer, no amount of speaking in tongues that can move God. The only thing that can move God is your faith, and that your faith is acting upon what God has told you. That means you have to obey God in all spheres of life, in all ramifications of life, in all stages, in all levels. Don't pretend that, okay, if I don't go to church, I will send my tithe. If I don't go to church, I will do some seed sowing. All these pastors that are telling, bring a seed, bring a tithe, bring all these things, all are just sacrifice. And there's no sacrifice. Jesus already sacrificed the greatest sacrifice, which Jesus said, it is finished. All the sacrifice that you need to do now, it is finished, has completed it. So what next now is for you to obey God. When you obey God in totality, obey God in righteousness, obey God in holiness, obey God in helping others, and that's how you are going to be a obedient sons and daughters of God. Don't let anybody push you to sacrifice your house. A lot of things happened last year. You see some people, some pastor will be telling them, why can't you, when you sacrifice, sow a seed, sow your house, sow your cars, sow your shirts, sow your shoes, sow your farm, sow your lands, and see yet nothing is happening. Nothing is happening. Why? Because God is not looking, and it cannot be demanding for material things from you. The book of Psalms says, son, give me your heart. What God is asking from you is your heart. It's not your money. This year, don't be running after sacrifice. Sacrifice is praying, praying, and praying, and you neglect holiness. Sacrifice is fasting, 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 and you neglect righteousness. Sacrifice is trying to sow a seed try to plant a tree, try to pay your tithe, trying to do offering, all sorts of things to be generosity, instead of you to obey all the commandment of God. The two greatest commandments is love your God and love your neighbors. If you don't love God and you are doing sacrifice, you are just wasting your money, you are wasting your time. If you are paying all sorts of things, even though if you like, you are the one that build the biggest church, you are the one that can speak in tongues, you are the one that can do healing, all sorts of healing without love. Paul says you are just a empty vessel that makes noise. So this year, my brothers and sisters, all you need to do is to obey God totally. Don't be like King Saul, that God told, go and destroy Amalekite. And when he got there, he separated some things for himself. But by the time the secret leaked, he said he separated it for God. What are the things that you are separating for yourself and people think you are separating from God? Most of the prayers that you are praying, you are not praying for the expansion of God's kingdom. You are praying for your own expansion. That's why your prayer is not answered. Tomorrow I will talk about this one. Tomorrow, why your prayers are not answered. So this year, make sure you obey God in totalities, not halfway. Make sure this year you do more obedience than sacrifice. Sacrifice will never take you anywhere. God himself said, obedience is better than sacrifice. This year, are you going to obey God or you are going to be doing sacrifice? Are you going to obey God or you are going to be speaking in tongues? Are you going to obey God or you are going to be paying tithe? Are you going to obey God or you are going to be paying offering? Are you going to be paying to obey God or you are going to just be sowing a seed? Are you going to be obeying God or you are just going to be going to church? Are you going to be obeying God rather than doing sacrifice? Sacrifice is all the material things. Sacrifice is for you to do and be doing things thinking God will surely help you. It will never do so. When you just obey God automatically, no matter, even Jesus says, before you pray, I've already answered. That means you are doing the will and the wishes of your Father. I need to know, which one do you want to do this year? Obedience or sacrifice? God bless you. God be with you. Kindly share. Shalom.